The Miami Dolphins, for all the things that they've done in the last offseason and last year, they seem like the clear team to truly challenge the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East Division because what they did last year in the offseason, getting an offensive-minded head coach in Mike McDaniel, who was the coordinator and being met in one part of the Kyle Shanahan head coaching tree, retooling the offensive line, getting good running backs if you're the Dolphins, and perhaps their biggest move last year in that offseason, trading a lot of draft capital to go and get a deadly weapon behind Jalen Waddle and especially for Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill from the Kansas City Chiefs. So you had a loaded offense with Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, and a running back in Raheem Mostert. But even with all that, obviously the biggest question remained: would Tua Tagovailoa in his third year, would he be able to take advantage of all that talent around him and be that dude? Can he take that big leap and overtake the Bills, or at least make the playoffs with that Dolphins team? And at least in the first couple weeks of the season, it certainly looked that way, especially with Mike McDaniel's coaching. Compared to Brian Flores' coaching, Tua certainly looked more like a more focused and more poised quarterback, which especially helps when he had an offense loaded with those names already mentioned and a better offensive line. The team got off to a pretty good 3-0 start, including a really big comeback win on the road against the Baltimore Ravens, where they were down 24 points, and then they outlasted the Bills in a slugfest. But here's the big B-U-T, not the double T. That game against the Bills is where things start to slowly sour for Miami. That's because Tua got concussed in the second quarter, being wobbly, and then he had to get taken to the back for concussion protocol. And then all of a sudden, he came back in. Like, he was fine. And that's where the things started to really get questionable. Like, how was he okay? Like, after he just got hit, was wobbly, and all that. And then things got really questionable when the Dolphins had a short turnaround for a Thursday night game in Cincinnati, where they had to travel for that game. He still played, and when he took a hard sack and hit his head on the turf, he was, I don't want to say it, he was seriously hurt. He was concussed again. I don't like talking about that concussion situation because, very sensitive subject. But whether it was he wanted to play or whether he was cleared or not, the Dolphins were stupid. The Dolphins were very irresponsible to let him go out and play when it looked like he still clearly had concussion symptoms. Like, they did not need him to trot out there just to protect their undefeated record, just to keep the offensive momentum going, or whatever their intentions were. It was still very irresponsible. Yes, looking back at it, what was it? 6 months ago? It was still a very irresponsible move to have him go out there when on a very short turnaround to have him play like that. So they finally let him rest because it got that serious. And then when he came back, he helped the Dolphins win 5 straight games. They were 8-3. It looked like they were well on their way to potentially clinching the AFC East Division title because they were that hot and the Bills were getting that cold. At the end of November, they were, like I said, 8-3, but then things started to spiral down because Tua's play started regressing. He started turning the ball over more frequently. The whole team as a whole, they started playing more sloppy. The defense was allowing more big plays. And then on Christmas Day against the Packers, Tua got concussed for a third time. Yeah, not good at all, man. It was not good. 3 concussions in a season. Ouch. So they did clinch a playoff spot in the season finale against the Jets, but they had to play their wild card game on the road against the Bills without Tua. They still managed to cut it close and nearly pull it away with their third-string quarterback, Skylar Thompson. yeah, at one point they managed to take the lead and they were like over 6 minutes away from beating the Bills, a Super Bowl favorite, mind you. And the Bills were giving that game away to them. But bad clock management from Mike McDaniel, and of course, when you're starting your third string quarterback and Skylar Thompson, the limitations were eventually going to catch up to them. And that allowed the Bills to come back, win it, and eliminate the Dolphins in that first round matchup. So overall, when you look back at this 9-8 season for Miami, it's a little hard to exactly judge what it could have been. Because obviously, when you look at the stretches where Tua played, yeah, the December games were not great. He did not play well. But when you look at the earlier stretches where he played, he looked like a pretty good quarterback. Especially when you have receivers like Jay Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Mike Gesicki, even though he wasn't involved that well, because obviously you have two really good receivers in Waddle and Hill, and a running back tandem of Raheem Mostert, and then later in the season, Jeff Wilson Jr. So when you have a fast, efficient offense like that, Tua was performing really well. It's just the problem is, like, you had a lot of what ifs because of the whole Tua concussion issue. And I still condemn Miami for how they handled it. But the important thing is Tua is alive and well. And now it's on Tua to stay healthy and for Miami to keep him healthy this coming fall if they want to regain that proper chance of competing in the AFC East and potentially downing the Bills in that division. So when you look at this offseason so far for the Dolphins, they had around $13 million to start spending. Some of their key free agents before free agency started were punter Thomas Morstead, defensive ends Melvin Ingram and Trey Flowers, running backs Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr., tight end Mike Gesicki, and backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. So they did lose Mike Gesicki to the Patriots, but perhaps their biggest move so far was trading for Rams corner Jalen Ramsey. So their secondary definitely got better because the Rams are sorely missing someone opposite Xavier Howard. So having Ramsey opposite Howard is definitely going to help the secondary when Ramsey is a lockdown corner. So in turn, they did release Byron Jones and designate it as a post-June 1st cut. They did manage to re-sign running backs Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. to cheap deals. So that's good for them. A good, solid running back tandem. They got a new backup quarterback in Mike White from the Jets. So Mike White's not going that far in terms of like distance and staying in the division. They did get a good linebacker in David Long of the Titans and a potential starting safety, Deshaun Elliott. So overall, it's been a pretty good, productive offseason so far for the Dolphins as they try to rectify that pretty disappointing end to 2022. So obviously, some of the things they still have to address is upgrading that offensive line for Tua, at least gain some depth. The guard center spots were eh. So they still need some help there. And they could definitely stand to get some depth behind Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips because the pass rush, there are still some things to be desired there. So Miami, they've done a pretty good job so far in addressing the defensive side of the ball. Now their focus should be finding some protection for Tua in the draft. You got to keep him healthy, man. I mean, of course, it's on Tua to protect himself too. So if the Dolphins nail the part where they find some protection, especially up front, then the Dolphins could make that splash in 2023 that they just couldn't quite land in 2022 this past season.